Okay, good morning, everyone. Okay, so today, what we'll be discussing, even though it's a HSC moment, look for a way to, you know, integrate all aspects for us to discuss. So we are going to be discussing on one of the, at least, current trends in the world today. And basically, uh, this topic was what was discussed majorly in the world in the safety day that happened some weeks ago. So as the topic is shown on the screen, we can see it's impact of climate change on occupational health and safety. So what it's saying is that we'll be looking at how climate change can affect us in terms of how we work and how we do our business. So while we try as much as possible to discuss about current occurrences around the globe, we'll also see how we can dovetail into our own business and how we can also work into helping us reduce our impact as well as having a good environment for to work. Next slide, please. During this discussion, we'll look at climate change. We'll look at its definition, its importance. We'll also look at the impact. We'll look at the effects. We'll look at the mitigation, and we'll have our call to action. But because of time, we'll look at how far we can go today. And if there's still enough time, or we can have another session to discuss this further. So, what is climate change? So we can see that even according to World Health Organization, as regards to COP24, it's already saying that climate change is the greatest health challenge in the 21st century. And we can also see that climate change impacts all parts of the world. So no matter where you are, climate change will affect you. Obviously, one of the effects is the unusual weather. Coming out of the house this morning and seeing the the heat outside, especially those of us in Nigeria, we can say that yes, we are beginning to see an unusual occurrence in a rainy season where everywhere is supposed to be cold. So just like the way it's affecting us here, if you go to the polar regions too, you see people talking about the ice melting, increase in the sea levels, high temperatures and all that. So these are just some of the effects. And obviously, if we don't curb it, it has a tendency to damage our food and water sources. Food has to do with agriculture, our land. Then water sources has to do with our oceans, and even organisms living there and businesses we have there. So briefly, let's talk about climate change. We can say climate change simply refers to the long-term shifts, in temperature. That means when you're having a different type of temperature, either the high or the cold temperature, and weather patterns. So when you talk about weather, you're looking at maybe when you're supposed to have a rainy season, you're still having a hot environment, dry season, and the likes. So it happens in regions, in states, in countries, and even in the world at large. And we've been able to also see that one of the major cause is human activity. which as we go on, we would also look at it. Look at emission of greenhouse gases. So when you hear greenhouse gases, what comes to your mind? You hear the carbon dioxide, which is the CO2. We hear the methane, CH4, nitrous oxide, that is N2O, or you can have the oxides of nitrogen, and also you can also have the oxide of um, of carbon, which you have both the carbon monoxide, CO, and you have the carbon dioxide, which is CO2. So what are the effects? These gases capture heat within the Earth's surface. Okay, so now let's have a pictorial view of what I'm talking about. Now, if you look at the first picture, what you can see is the natural greenhouse effect. So it's what it's saying is that this is what is supposed to happen naturally. You have the sun hitting the earth, and also through the radiations. We all know that. And we have the earth also, when it's being heated, re-emitting or re-radiating that same energy outside, to the space. And we also have the shield, that's the reddish part where you have the storage of those greenhouse gases, and you have the atmosphere. So this is what is supposed to happen naturally. Now, you can see that those gases exist normally, but where do they exist? So that is, you can see it's happening above the atmosphere. We have, different layers of the atmosphere. You have the lithosphere, stratosphere, atmosphere, and the likes. So you can see where that particular greenhouse gases is being, or where they are supposed to actually exist. But now, and if you also take a look at that picture, you can see that the Earth's surface looks bright. You can see a lot of green, whitish things. Those are the ice. You can see less water. Do you understand? You can see a lot of green also areas. Now let's take a look at the second picture. What happens? As a result of the increase, the increase in this emission, you now have more of those gases being trapped within the atmosphere. So when it's being trapped within the atmosphere, what happens? First of all, you have less heat escaping to the space because you're already having an umbrella which captures it very close to the Earth's surface. Now, what happens again? You get the sun radiation. Look at the level at which the heat being emitted in the Earth is also redirected back, and you also have more re-emitted heat. So which is the reason why we have the change in climatic conditions and in the weather conditions. So I don't know. I think this picture has been able to help us, give us an insight to what actually happens. So it means that the more you, you on your generator that emits CO2 and all these gases, the more you drive your cars, the more you use equipment that produces these gases, it doesn't just go away. It's being trapped, at the surface. And it's because you are now having more amounts. So it's just like you have a house and you are putting stacks of goods. It gets to the point where as long as you're not taking it out, it starts getting to the door, it's getting closer to you. So this is just a simple analogy of it. I don't know if you get it. Okay, good. After understanding this, basically we need to look at its impact. Some of the impacts that we're going to discuss here will include, obviously, we've talked more on the extreme weather events. We'll talk a little bit on vector-borne and waterborne diseases, mental health issues, occupational hazards, workforce displacement, economic issues, disruption of supply chains, poor air quality, and heat issues. Now, we're going to look at this one after the other. But because of time, um, I'll just take a look at some of those effects that, we probably don't have our little knowledge about. I know when you talk about workforce displacement, it just means that if peradventure, you are living in an area that do not have the effect of this climate change that is probably leading to, let's say, increase in sea level, and where you are staying, there's flooding. What happens? You won't be able to stay there again. It means that you need to what? Migrate, which is one of the effects. So it means that workforce that is supposed to be stated in that particular area, we have to look for a more convenient place for them to stay, right? Some companies also that might need a certain type of temperature to keep their, products or keep their goods, and they cannot particularly regulate it. They need to move also their businesses to well-regulated temperature. So it means that there will always be migration to areas where you have more businesses and also good, conducive environment for people to work. If you look at another one that is also very important to talk about, the vector-borne and waterborne disease that actually affect our health. When you have, now we all know that most of us, especially if you are AA, once it's raining like this and you have a lot of rainfall, you get to see a lot of people falling ill with malaria. I'm sure I'm correct. So, most of these things happen when, there's a change. So let's assume that, the rainfall for that particular period was supposed to be lesser. And because of the high precipitation and the high water cycle, and you know how the water cycle is now. Once the rain falls, there's a bit of heating, and the same heated water vapor goes into the atmosphere. There's condensation and there's rainfall. So the more you have that heating value, you have higher amount of rainfall. So it means that most of these diseases might actually even migrate, to certain areas that are not supposed to be. And you have high, like I said, when you have a lot of stagnant water, you have a lot of inflow of water across water bodies, you also have likelihood of different diseases happening more, such as the malaria, the cholera, and other, infection diseases. Mental health. Here we have to look at stress, anxiety. It's known that once you are in a heated place and you are not comfortable there, you tend to be more anxious. You tend to be, easily stressed up to when you're in a cool environment. So I think that is self-explanatory. When you look at also ergonomics, you look at the uh that's the musculoskeletal disorders, that is the MSDS. You have to look at also reduced productivity. As long as you do not have a convenient place to work, do you understand? And it's not comfortable for you. These issues might come up, and and these are also due to extreme weather events, And when you also look at mental health issues, job insecurity, you're not even sure if your job, you're working in that place is going to last, because you're not sure if the company might decide to pack up and leave. So I think on ergonomic issue, we've talked about it. Yeah, especially jobs that demand you to use a lot of physical energy, it might while you're doing that with the whole heat stress, it can also cause what is called the MSD. Also, there might be some kind of materials you might need to wear while working. But because of the heat stress, you might also not be comfortable wearing it. So imagine if you are now being forced to wear it, it also has an impact. Um, I think the others, which has to do with disruption of chain supply. Obviously, once businesses are migrating, you know, where you need to buy a particular product that they shift from here to Kano because of the weather condition, because they need a cooler environment, or they shift it to another region. Obviously, it will disrupt that. So quickly, let's also look at mitigation and adaptive strategy. So we are going to discuss this under two parts. We'll look at the mitigation. Under the mitigation, we'll talk about the risk assessment and management. We'll talk about technological solutions, and we'll also look at the green practices as well as sustainability. So when we are looking at the risk assessment, so yes, we are talking about mitigation. So it means that for you to mitigate whatever, it's just like what we're in the other office, the OHS people did a risk assessment. The risk assessment will also cover your work environment. So I'm sure I don't want to dwell so much on this because of our time, but quickly, while doing your risk assessment, obviously you have to look at the hazard identification. You have to decide on who might be harmed as well. You have to evaluate the risk and also decide on precaution. Obviously, you record your findings and you continually review your assessment and update if necessary. So your risk assessment is a good tool to look at how you can mitigate such issues. Um, when you do your risk assessment, what is important? Obviously, it will lead to prevention of workplace accidents. It will enhance resilience to the climate change. So by the time you've created a good mitigation plan, it means even if there's a climate change that occurs in future, you are easily able to adapt and create resilience. Obviously, it will lead to compliance and regulatory requirements. Secondly, we'll look at the technological solution. When you look at technological solution, what will it bring about? Yes, technology always have a way of giving you early warnings. You look at the likes of your weather forecaster or your people working with NIMET or people working with all these meteorological agency. Most of what they look out for are potential impact and also give early warnings. So even as a as a company, we should also look at ways where we can also invest into um uh, technologies that can also do that for, especially, let's take for example, if you're having someone traveling, do you have a system where they are actually checking the weather and say, oh, is it safe or is it not safe to travel? If there's a particular working environment we are going to, do we actually do that? So those are information system that we need to also imbibe. Real-time monitoring, first of all, this is even probably the easiest. Most companies do this within an environment. They already know the kind of temperature that is desired rather. So they have thermometers placed on different areas just to check the weather. So once it's getting too hot, they also note that, and they also find a way to either make the environment cooler. So these are also doing. So when you talk about weather tracking, obviously you want to understand the weather conditions over periods of time and also use that to infer or to also look at how will this environment be. So you just tracking your weather the same way within the office space. While tracking, you know when the temperature naturally will go up or when it will come down, with those information, you can do proper tracking and create ways to monitor that. Aside that, you have some technologies that can easily detect, and advice in sense. Even some ACs, you see that once you set it, once the place is getting hot, it's already picking up again. So there are technologies to actually track it. So why we are dwelling so much on heat is because basically within our work environment, what is the greatest impact for us, is actually heat. Then when you look at logistics and travel time, we might now look at other meteorological information that we also need, you understand, to decide that. So these are some things we can always look into, and have a system where we can always advise, oh, you are going to Lekki today, what is the weather condition? Or do you need to hold a raincoat while you are going? Do you need to hold an umbrella? Or do you need to check your car to make sure that the wipers are working well, to also help the worker go there in safe conditions and back? So those are some of the importance of all this. I think we've discussed so much on technology. So for the technological solutions, we've identified that one of the benefits will be easy identification and response. I think I've stated that in terms of how fast we're able to identify potential impact on the workers, on our work, and profile solutions, enhance workers protection. Once you're able to, project, identify, you can prepare for whatever issues that might arise. You can advise. You can also create mitigation plans, even for your office space. I know there are some times that, proper records in our area can tell you that here there's high rainfall, there's high thunderstorm, or you need to have a thunder arrest, or you need to do this. So it's always good to have systems of either protecting the properties of the workers on protecting themselves and their well-being. Improved efficiency. Obviously, once your workers are safe, when they are working in a very conducive environment, easily they'll be more efficient and they'll be more happy to do your job. And once you have a happy worker or a happy workforce, you can always be rest assured that you get the best from them. Okay. This is just a few we can take today. I don't know if there are any questions we can just take for now before we wrap up.
Okay, thank you, Dari. Tomorrow, I want you to further explain that introductory part about how the gases affect the atmosphere.
Okay.
This particular, thank you.
Thanks, sir. So to your question that we should just explain more on how it affects on the effect of our activities and climate. So naturally, when we burn fossil, when we burn you know, when I say fossil now, I have to talk about either your diesel, your gas, your PMS, or anything that has to do with hydrocarbon, or even your landfill. I know I was having a conversation on the landfill effect. So when you have a landfill and you store materials, we all know that as a result of decomposition, you understand, or biological matters, there's also production of gases, like your methane gases. In fact, some countries, store that and use that to generate electricity or gas, even for users and consumption. So what we're saying is that there's always a constant production of or release of these gases. Now, we quite understand that there is a natural occurrence. So when we say natural occurrence, there's a natural quantity that the atmosphere is able to contain per time, you know. And that's why if you see the first slide, you can see that the atmosphere region is clear. Do you understand? So it means that the cover that the earth has for those gases is on that particular level that is on the red patch, you know. However, if you have increase in these emissions, so what happens is that that natural cover is being exhausted and it begins to what? Extend. That's why we always talk about the fact that we should reduce um, uh, the release of greenhouse gases because the ozone layer, yes. So these gases are also known as your ozone gases. Do you understand? Your O3 and the likes. So what we are saying in essence is that as a result of our constant use and emission of these particular gases, it gets to a point where the cover is filled up and it begins to what? Extend to the earth. No. Now, so as it's extending, it means that the area that needs to, be buffered by these ozone gases is actually now extending. So you're now having a shorter distance. So when you're having that, it means once the radiation hits this, solar radiation hits it, there's a reflection that's supposed to go back to the atmosphere. And like you can see there, some of it will do what? Escape. You get. But as a result of the fact that the cover is now, much, you now have a bit of another envelope that now acts like its own shield. So instead of it going to the part of the ozone layer and emitting out, it now bounces back to the earth. Now, this is like a simple analogy. If you are flying a rocket or something is flying, to a further distance, by the time it's re-emitting, what happens? It has, a wider coverage and, it's lesser. But once it's closer, it means that what? You're having a higher impact of that reflection. So what we are seeing here is that the area where it's supposed to house the gas, we are now is now being depleted. Do you understand? So you're now having a direct, re-emission of that heat wave. Yes, which is why you are seeing a lot of ice melting and the fact that, in fact, if you look at the color of the earth surface at that point, you can see it's even getting darker. You understand? So it's if you fly now, you know that once you leave your first cloud, you are getting to another cloud, right? In fact, if sometimes you might see yourself flying in the midst of two clouds, especially if you are going to further distance. So in an essence, when we have a lot of that emission, what does it do? It reduces the effect of the natural occurrence of that particular process. So that's why from that direction now, you can see the sun is radiating down to the earth. You are seeing the fact that you are having a lot of redirection of that emission at that point. You can see the point where it's showing. So it's not even reaching to the point where it's emitting outside the space. So you're not having more of the re-emitted heat coming back to the earth, which is one of the reasons why we are having this high temperature. So once you are having high amount of heat coming back, obviously you have the high temperature, and obviously that leads to other effects, like when you talk about the high rise in the sea level, by the time you have the temperature increasing, you have the polar icing part of the earth melting more, which is why you see a lot of more of these ices going back to the sea. And I've also discussed about the high amount of rainfall, because as a result of that heat, you have a lot of how would I put it now? The heat hitting our sea, and you're having that conventional method of rainfall where you have the heat turns the water into vapor, and the vapor, condenses immediately and comes back to the earth as rainfall. So that is what leads to also the increase in the sea level. And basically, the diagram just gives us an idea of what we are supposed to have and what is happening as a result of the increase in our use of this particular or release of these particular gases. I don't know if I was able to touch on that.
Yes, thank you, Dari. Yes, I think it's well explained now. Thank you. I was asking that maybe that explanation coming tomorrow, but you've already done that now, so um, that saves our time.
Okay,
We're going to
tomorrow.
find out tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh,
So, but since you've already done that, so we'll move to other things tomorrow. Thank you.
all right, no issues. So, any other questions? And I don't know why, at least the younger people should be able to even. So this is a interactive session. You understand? I'm only telling you the little knowledge I have. We're having some fresh Einsteins that is supposed to educate us more on it and let us know. So I don't know why we are quiet. I need someone to just at least let's know that knowledge was passed. Just give us their own intake on what they understand by what we've discussed so far, and also what they can suggest, probably outside of what we've said, we can do as individuals in our house, to in our own space, sorry, to reduce the effects. So I'm going to take one from the online, then we'll take one physical too. So please, let's be fast. Yeah, we're already taking time. So let's 1 minute, please. So it doesn't look like this guy just came to say a lot of English. So
No,
let's
30
have
seconds. 30 seconds, please. 30 seconds.
okay, 30
Oh, fine.
seconds. Okay. So Blessing, can you just quickly yeah, Blessing, can you hear us? Okay, so while we are waiting for Blessing, um Timmy, can you give us your own take on what you've learned, and not just so I want to also hear your own idea on what we talk about the effects and mitigation. So you can tell us what you do can do in our own small space.
Okay, what I feel we can do to mitigate against it is, okay, what I've been able to learn is that human activities in different ways can increase the rate at which the rate of ozone layer depletion, because the activities we carry out release different gases into the atmosphere. Just from our regular burning, a lot of gases are released, and it will keep causing the ozone layer to deplete, leading to climate change in a negative way. So one of the ways I think we can mitigate against it is by reducing those activities. Like, for example, there should be, especially where people are staying, there should be secluded areas for carrying out some certain activities. And we can implement technologies that will help to reduce the effect of the gases produced from those activities we carry out. That's what I have to say.
I think it's our only one to sit down.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dari. Basically, what I've learned today from this beautiful presentation is actually broadening our scope to our understanding to what the the climate change is and the effect is on the planet, on the surface of the earth. We are coming to more realization that a lot of our daily activities is having serious negative impact to the earth, because our daily activities means that our vehicular movements, our manufacturing sector, our power sector, where we are releasing so much greenhouse gas effects to the atmosphere. And these greenhouse gases are trapped. Because they are trapped and there's no room for escape, that is the main reason why we're having a warmed earth. The temperature of the earth is going high on a daily basis. And we cannot deny the fact that global warming has become a thing of Lagos right now, because I remember some months back, the temperature in Lagos was at the extreme, all-time high. So it's time we come to realization that we start doing and remediating solutions that can be environmentally friendly. Thank you.
So that's the end of the gentlemen. Thanks for. So tomorrow would, if God permits.
Okay, so I believe this was where we stopped yesterday, and what we are actually looking at on this topic is the impact of occupational health and safety, the impact of climate on occupational health and safety. Okay, so today we're talking about the risk assessment and management. So we're looking at two different parts. The first part has to do with the components, and the second part has to do with the benefits. So what's the component of risk assessment? So risk assessment is basically the systematic identification, evaluation, and mitigation of potential hazard and risks in the workplace. So what we are basically trying to talk about is how you identify and mitigate the risks that we have. Mr. Kennedy, can you confirm if you are seeing my screen well? I don't know.
Yes, I can see your screen. Yeah, we can see the hazard identification, risk evaluation, mitigation strategies, OSH, framework, and integration. Okay, you move to another slide.
All right, so let's proceed then. So when we're talking about risk identification and management, we're looking at different attributes, different components. So the first one has to do with hazard identification. The first thing you need to do is you need to identify the hazards that we have in the workplace. You understand? So there are different methods of identifying hazards. I believe the OHS department actually can share more light on this. There are different checklists that are used to identify the hazards depending on the exact company or industry we're talking about. You understand? So when we're looking at the construction industry, construction company, the hazards in the construction company might be different from the hazard that we have in offices. That the construction company might have to do with slips and fall hazards, falling objects hazards, suspended loads, working at height, and various other hazards. So you need to look at this company. What is the hazard identification metrics that you can use in your own organization? So once you get that done, then you go ahead to develop the checklist and check for all the hazards. And after checking for the hazard, the next thing you need to do is the risk evaluation. This has to do with evaluating the risks that each hazard might impose to the organization or business. You understand? So there are some hazards that might have great risks. There are some hazards that might have lesser risks. You understand? So now this should actually form your, I believe there's something called the risk matrix. So from there, you should be able to identify the risks that each hazard poses. What are the mitigative? I'm already going to mitigative strategies. So look at what are the mitigative strategies of each of these risks. What are the measures you can actually adopt to reduce the effect of the risks to individuals and the organization in general? When we are talking about how to reduce the effects, you need to consider the persons, the environment, the organization, and the surrounding community. So look at how you can evaluate the risk, how you can mitigate the risk, and what are the resultant impacts that might still remain after you've employed the mitigative strategy. So there should be a mixed matrix for each organization. So this risk matrix should actually capture this and actually guide the organization to know how to reduce risks and ensure sustainable practices. So we are talking about the next one has to do with mitigation strategies. I've already spoken about this. This just has to do with the measures and the strategies you put in place to reduce, lower, or totally eliminate some certain risks from the organization or activities going on. You look at that, they also look at the OHS framework integration, the Occupational Safety and Health framework integration. So how can you integrate all this into the occupational health and safety? How can you put this into industry? How can you put this into practice? You understand? So this actually speaks about that. So let me just go to the next slide. So what are risk management assessment benefits? So the first one has to do with prevention of workplace accidents and illnesses. Okay. Enhance resilience to climate change impacts and compliance with regulatory requirements. I believe this is explanatory enough. The first one has to do with prevention of workplace accidents. I also add incidents too and illnesses. So if you have a proper risk assessment arrangement in place, so you get all these benefits. For the next part, we look at what are the technological solutions to the impacts of climate change on occupational health and safety. So this involves the utilization of advanced technology to address climate-related risks in your workplace. It enhances monitoring, early warning, and response capabilities. You understand? So these are the components of technological solutions. So what you will get from integrating technological solutions in organizations, one of the things we get has to do with early warning system, real-time monitoring, weather tracking, and innovative technology. So early warning system, if there's any pollutant or there's any high level of contamination or any high level of, all I call it, any high level of exposure to certain gases, certain environmental negative impacts within the organization, you actually get this early warning system. You actually get these signs that yes, there are some issues affecting the organization. There are some high levels of pollution within the organization, and from this warning sign, you'll be able to know what to do. You understand? So this will actually prepare you enough to early detect issues arising within the organization. So we also, one of the other benefits has to do with real-time monitoring. We'll also be able to monitor and detect the period that, let's say, some exposures and emissions actually came forth. Understand? In an organization, there might be an emission of CO2 within the organization. Understand? So when you put in all these technological solutions, if you go to some companies, you see that they put some thermometers within some sensitive areas. So with that thermometer, I can easily detect that, oh, the level of CO2 has spiked up, the level of CO is actually increasing. You understand? And that will make you detect that, okay, there's an issue. From there, you'll be able to easily do your investigation to track the sources of those emissions. And from there, be able to mitigate those issues. You understand? You know, there are different gases that are really harmful to the health. We have the CO, the impact of the CO to workers, people within an organization might be really, really harmful. You understand? So it's actually very important and key that we actually employ these early warning systems and real-time monitoring within organizations. This also aids with weather tracking. You understand? If you have those internal meters within your organization, you can easily track the weather. If it's a raining, if there's going to be a raining, if there's going to be a downpour of rain, you can easily monitor and easily know in time, and from there you'll be able to know that okay, there are some operations you need to do that this rainy situation might not actually help encourage those things. So you avoid doing those things so as to ensure efficiency and ensure smooth going operations. The next one has to do with innovative technology. So you putting in this technological solution, we actually bring in more better innovation within the organization. You understand? When they go to your firm and they see different technologies, it's actually at the long run boost your brand. You understand? So adoption of wearable devices, sensors, drones, and remote sensing technologies also helps to improve workspace safety. Okay, so let's just go to the next slide. So what are the benefits? The benefits has to do with education and response to climate-related hazards, enhance worker protection and well-being, improve efficiency and effectiveness of safety measures. I believe we just spoke about all this. So those are some of the benefits too. So the next one we are talking about has to do with green practices and sustainability. So what are the components of green practices? Green practices actually involves the adoption of environmental sustainable practices to reduce carbon footprint and mitigate climate change impacts. So we have 4 general components of green practices. The first one has to do with carbon footprint reduction. Carbon footprint reduction has to do with implementing measures to reduce energy consumption, minimize waste, and promote eco-friendly transportation options. Understand? If you are if you've been watching news and listening to newspapers and the recent trends, you see that each organization are trying to mitigate and lower their carbon footprint. Understand? This has to do with the level of carbon emission within organizations. So everybody is trying to buy into renewable energy sources so as to as much as possible, lower the rate of emission of carbon within the organization. You understand? So one of the benefits of green practices is it helps to reduce your carbon footprint. The next one has to do with sustainable procurement. So when I talk about sustainable procurement, this has to do with encouraging the environmentally friendly products and services to your organization. So this has to do with ensuring proper waste management from the source. So the materials you use, the material you procure from your vendors, are they environmentally friendly? Are they environmentally sustainable? So this has to do, that's what we talk about, sustainable procurement. You understand? I believe there was one time in Kevin where he actually started shifting to discouraging the use of plastics. And we said that no PET can or plastic drink should be brought to the organization. We also introduced, also shared some water jars to our employees and everyone that if we are that's what we'll be using. Also discourage the use of water bottles. That was where we actually shifted to the use of our water dispenser. So these are other means of sustainability, you understand? So sustainable procurement has to do with dealing with the issues of the use of non-degradable materials, non-environmentally friendly materials right from the source. So all your vendors make sure that what they are giving to you are sustainable materials and items that will actually serve good benefits to the environment. You understand? So the next one has to do with waste reduction and recycling. It has to do with implementing proper waste management strategies and initiatives to minimize environmental impacts. Rather than if you look at it holistically, there's generally nothing like waste. You understand? Because anything you regard as a waste to you might be actually useful to someone else. You understand? So rather than discarding materials as waste, why don't we look at the initiative of recycling waste into another means of energy or another source for use? You understand? So that's what has to do with waste reduction and recycling. So looking at the next item, we're looking at green practices and sustainability. What are the benefits? We have reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. At this point, I would like to ask some questions. I don't know if everyone is participating and following. Let me just pick some people. Mr. Adewale, please, can you tell us the means we can actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions that you know? Like, can just give us like two.
Okay, Mr. Shadrach, one of the best ways we can actually reduce the greenhouse emission gas into the atmosphere, we have to start looking at and sorting out on a renewable energy source. So one that renewable energy source is one of the best way to reduce the greenhouse gas effects in the environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you
Renewable
very much,
energy
sir.
source like the use of solar energy, the use of wind, the wind, there's this wind turbine that's being used for generating electricity, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So one of the major greenhouse gas that we have is carbon dioxide. We also have nitrogen oxides, methane, and some other gases. So shifting to other sustainable energy sources will actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, well, the benefits of green practices also has to do with healthier and safer environment for employees. You understand? So when everyone is working in an environmentally friendly option, the place is safe, there's little noise, there's no air pollution, no emissions, the heat level is low. We are working under good temperature. You see that everyone will be healthier and safer. Understand? There will be little rates of illnesses or diseases within the organization. All that benefits has to do with alignment with corporate social responsibility goals. Mr. Ayobami Tijani, please can you shed more light on these other benefits?
So
Okay.
alignment, yes, alignment with corporate and social responsibility goals. Yes, like to align with social, to educate our people, to come up with maybe a webinar and with people to for responsibility, to tell them, to enlighten them more about how to reduce about greenhouse practices and sustainability benefits. So how it can be the impact for aligning and other things. So that's what I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tijani. I actually did justice to that. So the next one has to do with compliance with environmental regulation. So now many businesses are actually big on compliance because we have the regulatory agencies actually chasing many organizations regarding compliance issues. We have different cases. If you check the newspapers, you hear of LASEPA closing up some companies and all. So one of the benefits of green practices and sustainability is actually it helps with with organizations meeting with compliance for environmental regulations. You understand? So if you employ green practices, you actually reduce your pollution level. You actually properly manage your waste. You also ensure your permits and policies are in place. You also ensure there's a proper environmental management system within your organization. You understand? So this actually helps to increase compliance. So I'll just go to the next slide, please. Okay, so what we're talking about now has to do with adaptation strategies. Okay, so we're looking at education and training policy and regulations under this item. So under adaptation strategies, one of the things we're looking at is education and training. So this involves the comprehensive education and training programs to increase awareness to people, to workers within the workspace. Understand? So this also increase awareness on how to address climate-related hazards. You understand? It also empowers workers and managers to recognize, prevent, and respond effectively to environmental risks. You understand? So we are looking at climate hazard awareness, that the key components. We are looking at adaptive measures. We are looking at health risk awareness and emergency preparedness. Okay, so under climate awareness, this has to do with educating your employees about climate-related hazards, such as heat stress, extreme weather events, and air quality changes. This just has to do with making sure everyone is aware of how to deal with those conditions whenever they are. Okay, the next one has to do with adaptive measures, which has to do with the training on adaptive measures. Adaptive measures can include the use of PPE, heat stress prevention techniques, and emergency response. So we have different PPE that can actually reduce the impact, the effects of climate change and extreme weather events to our employees while working. You understand? So you see that those welders, you see that people that are into welding activities within the organization, they actually very specialized overwork, they wear full PPE. So this actually to reduce the impact and the effects of exposure to certain hazards. Then the next one has to do with its health risks awareness. This also has to do with making increased awareness of the health risks associated with climate change. You understand? When there is flooding, there are different health risks that might actually be imposed to the workers. So you have to make them aware of what to do in such scenarios. Also, this helps to do with emergency preparedness. This involves providing training on emergency response, mitigating the impact of climate-related disasters. Okay, thank you. So now let's go to the next slide. What are the benefits of this? Benefits have to do with workers' empowerment to adapt to changing environmental conditions, reduction of workplace accidents, injuries, illnesses, and incidents, enhancement of organizational resilience to climate change impacts. So I believe this is self-explanatory. Or do we have any questions so far? Okay, I'll take that as a no. All right, so we are looking at the components of policy and regulations. This involves the development and implementation of policies and regulations to address climate-related risks. It establishes the framework for proactive adaptation measures and ensures compliance with safety standards. So when you have good policies, your policies are actually created to address risks that workplaces might be exposed to. You understand? So that's one of the benefits policies. You understand? So it establishes the framework for adaptive measures and ensures compliance with safety regulations. So what about one of the key components of policy and regulation has to do with regulatory framework, climate resilience policies, collaboration with stakeholders, and capacity building. Let me just talk about the collaboration with stakeholders. Collaboration with policy makers, industrial associations, and other stakeholders help to develop and implement effective climate adaptation strategies. So this has to do with making sure that everyone is actually involved. You understand? Your internal stakeholders and your external stakeholders are actually involved in implementing effective climate adaptation strategies. You understand? So your employees know what to do to actually adapt to climate changes. Your customers also know what to do, what you are doing as an organization to actually adapt and survive the climate changes. So that just has to do with that. So we are looking at the benefits. What are the benefits is it establishes a regulatory framework, enhancement of workplace safety and health, and collaboration. Yes. Okay, so let's talk about addressing climate change in ISO 45001. So in ISO 45001, there were some areas that actually there are some areas that actually speaks about climate change. You understand? So under the clause 4.1, if you check your ISO standard, you see it talks about understanding the organization and its context. So it actually states that organizations should now address climate change relevant to their operations. It also mandates the proactive evaluation of climate change hazards on workers' safety and health. Under clause 4.2, it also tells organizations to recognize their stakeholders' requirements related to climate change, and also include investors, regulatory bodies, and worker groups on side about climate resilience and safety standards. So this actually shows the relevance of climate change as it's been addressed in ISO 45000. So on this note, I'll open the floor for questions and answers.
Okay, thank you, Shadrach, for that presentation. Is not for a particular sector or division or practice. It's now even more integrated. When I say practice now, it's not just for the environmental people. I mean, an organization, it shouldn't be that anything that has to be do with sustainability or climate change. Yeah, we can have the drivers, as it were, but it's now also a safety issue, an occupational issue. So I think that integration is to also open our mind to understand that each and every one of us have a role to play, in making this work wherever we are and whatever position we take in the organization. I think one of the highlights for me is the fact that even in the current ISO 45001 2018 standards, which is practically the guideline for major when I say safety, compliance, auditing aspect for the OHS. It's now been embedded there while you are trying to understand the context of the organization. So it means that even while you are giving your reporting, this should also be part of it. So, and I think it's something that Kevin as a whole should look into and, start not just having several seminars talking about it, but also looking at way to implement sustainable means of helping the climate and helping the world at large. And like you said, also helping the community. So thank you so much, Shadrach, for that.
Okay, thank you, Shadrach. All right, thank you. I think that was a wonderful presentation. So I have more like a contribution to make in regard to what Dari just said or what you mentioned earlier about ISO 45001. So I think the basis of all this discussion is to stay carbon neutral, carbon neutrality, to adopt measures, you understand, to ensure that we offset carbon emission and the rest of them. So just to sustain the carbon footprint. So in organization, just as you mentioned, that has to do with the context of organization. So you need to look at the organization and also assess the activities you carry out to ensure you identify area you have carbon emission that will affect actually the climate. So if you check like manufacturing industries, most of the manufacturing industries today, if you go if you visit most of them, you discover that where they have their steam line, they have it both cladded and lagged. Let me just use the language insulation so that we understand better. You understand? Because all these steam line emits serious heat. So these are some of the things, and even energy conservation, where they install indoor electrical bulb, you step in, it turns on, you step out, it turns off. And if you check even their warehouses, they've changed all these diesel and fuel powered engine or forklift to CNG powered forklift also. So coming back to us an individual, changing of lifestyle also could also help. Like instead of you driving your private vehicles, like in Lagos, you see Lagos is crowded and all of us are using petrol engine, you understand? So we can just decided to say, okay, let's drop our private vehicles and take public vehicles or like buses. You understand? We'll have fewer vehicles on the road and we'll have fewer emission as well. You understand? So even eating a lot of meat is not also good. You understand? Because by the time you drop that outside or one way or the other, it finds its way outside. It emits a lot of carbon. So it is not an organization or organizational stuff alone. When it comes to private climate change, it also applies to our lifestyle that we live both at home, the running of our generator, how we manage power. You see us turning light on all through the day, because the light is just there, most especially those of us that are not using prepaid meters and the rest of them. So I think it's quite a wonderful one. Thank you so much for that presentation.
All right, thank you very much, sir. I really like the contribution to show that climate change is not just for organizations, also it also applies to individuals. So we'll actually discuss better on this when we make a presentation that actually cuts across individuals also. So thank you very much, Mr. Sylvester. I see Mr. Adewale's hands being raised. Please, I can proceed to unmute your mic and tell us your feedback or your contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Shedrack. I appreciate your presentation. It has really been insightful. I followed all through. So I just want to ask, because this relates to me personally in respect to climate change, and reasons being that the cost of food in the market, as the spike has really gone extremely high. And previously, some days back, I was really reading a lot of article online regarding scarcity of food in relation to the climate change. Some issues were related to insecurity. Some were issues related to fuel scarcity, and so on and so forth. The issue was multidimensional. Well, I just want to know if you can help me through clarity to the interrelationship between climate change and the cost of food in the market. The reason why we have very high spike of food, and the reason why is it that the farmers are becoming lazy, or the farmers just want to make a lot of profits from, or is it that there's no land to farm anymore? I don't know what the issue might be, but I feel we can relate it to climate change. I don't know if you can help me connect that dot. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Adewale.
Mr.
Okay, Mr.
Shepard, can I speak to that?
Yes, sir, you can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dewale. I think that's an intelligent question. So climate change, no doubt, has to do with the current situation of things when it comes to prices of foodstuff. It's really impacting it, and how Okay, if you go, let me give you a practical example, like what is happening in the north. Why you have you see this crisis, like from the north west, northeast down to north central, is because formerly we see fewer Fulani men in our area because most of them uh, lean towards the Lake Chad and what we call the Alkalari Basin. You understand? Because they have more rainfall than compared to what they are having now. So you see, if you are familiar with the Northeast, it's a kind of a semi-arid land where you have bushes and shrubs. You understand? But they don't have all these things anymore. And for them to survive, because these are how do we call them? These herdsmen, for them to survive, they have to bring this cattle down, moving down the south. So while they are moving down the south, there's a problem, clashes with farmers, because okay, if I have maybe a bush close to my farm, you understand, where I have my crops, and the cattle are grazing in that area. Before you know, the full animal maybe is controlling 100, 200, and it's just like 2 or 3 full animal. Before you know, they get into your farm. And when you complain, or maybe you drag, you fight, the next time they come, they attack you. You understand? So I can tell you that people in the north central and some of this part of the country, they no longer go to farm. Like in my place in Kogi, you understand? We have our farms taken over by Fulani. You understand? They don't go to farm. So in that case, you have fewer product coming out at the end of the year or at the end of the season. So now you can even check, unlike before, from Kogi, let's just say Kogi, you have about 50, 60, 70 or to 100 911 leaving Kogi state for Kano and other part of Nigeria, carrying foodstuff. But today I can tell you, you may not even see 1 or 2 or 3 because of this crisis. So since the Lake Chad is getting dried and they are having fewer rainfall in the northeast and some part of the north central area.
Hello, sir. Are you there, or is it my network? I can't hear Mr. Sylvester.
I think he is having network issues because I can't hear him either.
Okay. So let me just say this. Talking about the relationship between climate change and food increase in the spike in food prices, like you was actually rightly saying, due to the fact that there is lesser rainfall in some places like Chad and all, you see that other um, other communities, they actually try to also get food from other nearby communities, and this has led to some riots and some issues between different communities. So that causes, all the things it causes has to do with violence and issues between different communities. So this actually leads to a spike in the prices of food. One of the major cause has to do with the issue of extreme weather events. So when there's drought, when there's no rainfall, farmers won't be able to grow their crops well. Animals which survive on food crops, they won't be able to feed on, they won't be able to have easy access to prices at the food crops. You understand? So this actually leads to increase in prices of the crops as there's scarcity. You know, when we are talking about pricing, we need to consider the availability of resources. So when there is no resources or less resources available, when there's scarcity, the price of those available resources will be increased. Yeah, so when there is drought, we will have increase in prices since we won't have since this doesn't encourage the good cultivation of crops. Okay, when there's flood, when we have extreme weather events, extreme flooding in different areas where farming and other practices that actually encourage food in the nation, when all those areas are affected with flood, this will also lead to scarcity of food resources. So the available food resources should be sold at higher prices. So we have different causes of this to stand. So we have soil degradation, we have soil erosion. When there is high rainfall, there will be soil erosion. The soil available for farming and cultivation of these food crops we actually diminish in terms of the nutrients and in terms of what we actually support the food crops. So this leads to low income to farmers, and this leads to low cultivation of crops, leading to increased prices of food crops available. So, Mr. Adewale, I think you're
Okay,
well
let me
satisfied
just
with this.
let me just add to what Shadrach had just said. Yeah, I think he has spoken well. If you look at what Sylvester was mentioning, it had to do with migration. And if you had listened to the earlier part of the presentation, which was done yesterday, we discussed it that once the weather changes, that doesn't favor the living conditions for both animals or human beings, they tend to migrate. And obviously, migration can lead to, uncertainties like fightings and all that, which just like what he has also said, might also have a way to this conflict can reduce the potentials of farmers going into the farmland. Also, extreme weather conditions might not also favor the production or the growing of certain crops that are usually grown in that area. So let's say it could be that the weather condition might now not be able to favor that crop. So it means you'll be able to grow that crop. So now let's assume that same crop, because of its needs, is now being transported from a farther distance. So obviously, you see the likes of cost of logistics having an influence, on the cost of the particular materials. Yes, and the other like floodings can also destroy, farmlands as it were. So I think the relations has to do with either migration, seasonal change that might not favor production of certain crops usually grown within a specific area that might lead to either importation or transportation from further distance, as well as, also sometimes once a farmer, in a place like Jos, that's a cold weather, stays in the farm for like 6, 7 hours, to farm. When there is so much heat, obviously it also reduce the number of period or time he spends in the farm, because you get fatigued easily. And also if you are paying people, you have to pay more people. So this can be some of the effects and domino effect of these issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dario and Mr. Shadrach and Mr. Sylvester. I think more clarity has been put to me. So whenever I'm going to the market, or whenever I know I'm sending my wife to the market, I know how to top up, because I'm currently paying for climate change, because I can connect the dots. Uh, this change in climate is affecting the environment where they are farming, and from there it leads to migration to violence to scarcity of farmers and scarcity of food, less food in the market, um, higher competition for the food, and more price tag on the food. Yeah, thank you. I've been able to connect the dots. Thank you.